Okay, welcome to another Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. So this week we're going to jump right into things, right? So the theme for this week is defending from within your castle walls. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, right? But what we're going to do is take a look at considerations for self-defense, protecting yourself and others from within your home, your office, or your workplace. Okay, so we'll start with some general rules when it comes to things like, home, right? And then we'll break out. So we have 3 focal points for today's training. One, we're going to take a look at environmental considerations. We talk about this stuff a lot. And again, whether or not this is covered in any given self-defense class, martial arts school, whatever, usually that's where it stops, right? There's talk, okay? You need to do the extra work, okay? It's kind of like workplace violence, right? There might be a slide presentation and some do's and don'ts and some preventative zero tolerance policy statements or whatever. But if you're actually going to be safe in most workplaces, you're going to need to do the training for yourself because, well, I don't know, most companies are not. As a matter of fact, statistically speaking, only 2 to 3% of companies actually have things in place that will actually protect people and not just wah, 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 right? Words. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to talk about environmental conditions. We're going to talk about having the home field advantage. I know football or sports wording there, but it's that idea. And then we're going to take a look at setting up a ninja house. What do you mean by a ninja house? Well, I'll tell you about one that I visited, and there's a couple around Japan and whatnot, but I'll tell you about one, and then we're going to kind of leapfrog off of that. All right. So 3 things. First things, though, right? We're going to start with a general rule of thumb when it comes to home security. But if you're the business owner, if you're the general manager, director, whatever, okay, and you're looking at an office space, whatever, right? This may still apply, okay? So again, kind of stay with it, but we all have a home. I don't care if you own, rent, whatever, right? Live with your parents in a basement, whatever, okay? There's still the stuff to go on, okay? So what I'm going to cover very, very quickly is a very truncated version of something that I taught at a Ninjutsu seminar a bunch of years ago, right? Brought my security experience in and whatnot, and I did this thing, and it must have been a hot topic because the room was packed. Anyway, right? So what I did was I actually used an overlay, okay? So there is this kanji, right? Okay, this kanji. This kanji, one of the pronunciations for this kanji is o, right? Too long there, right? O, okay? O means king or rule or ruler or, and again, this is not just a man or whatever, right? It's gender neutral, but what we're talking about is somebody who's a ruler, right? And since we're talking about your castle, okay, you should be managing it like you're actually the king of the castle and not just somebody who lives there while everybody else does the shit. Right. So anyway, right. So this kanji again, for king or ruler, it's also used to outline if you're in ninjutsu, right? This idea of ten, chi, and jin, right? Heaven, earth, and mankind. Okay. Again, long story short here, whatever. 10 represents descending energy, which is about morals and ethics and universal justice and things like that, right? Chi, right? Ascending energy has to do with being in control of things, right? And then this gene, mankind. So the idea here is that for a ruler, right? For an enlightened ruler, they're balanced in between these 2 things. Okay. So we could dive into this some other day. This is not the point today. But the other thing that we're going to overlay over this thing, right, is this idea of Jo, right? Or Jo can be written that way as well. Chu and Ge. Okay. High, middle, and low. Okay. So again, here's the overlay, right? So if we do a house, and again, I'm just going to do a quick, caveman drawing. Okay. All right. So if we overlay this over our house. You just take this model and overlay it. Your house is laid out the way your house is laid out, or your office structure or whatever. Okay. So for this, what we're looking at is defending the castle, right? One of the lessons that one of the bodies of knowledge that were passed out to me sensei from his teacher, Takama sensei, and it's a part of ninjutsu, right? Not just, how do you duck punches, right? Because if they can't get at you, then you don't have to worry about this stuff. There's other stuff that we've obviously not put appropriate attention into. And so here they come, okay? So the idea here is they got to get into your house. They got to get into your office space. They got to get into your workplace before they can do any damage, okay? So here's the first stage, okay? So again, right? High, middle, and low as far as threat level, okay? But it doesn't match up this way, okay? It actually does this, okay? So your ground level things, right? Things that are accessible from the ground, okay? Front door, usually front windows, somebody's house, right? Especially if they have an extended porch, basement windows, those kind of things, right? Things that are easily accessible from the ground level, right? Are high priority, right? They're high risk because they don't have to work that hard to get in, okay? Now, if the first floor windows, which might be on the side of the house, right, where you don't have a porch or anything like that, they're elevated, right? So it's harder for them to get at, right? They might need to hoist themselves up. They might need a ladder, whatever, okay? Middle level, right? This kind of stuff here. And then the stuff that's way up top, right? Even if, he could shimmy up that tree and across that branch and down that gutter and then into your third floor window. Well, he might, okay? But unless he's really committed and you're his primary target and it's an assassination thing and they're going to do whatever the hell it takes, they don't put that much effort into it, okay? Yeah, but what if he does, sensei? Well, let's start with probability, because if you can't handle the probabilities, possibilities, right? But people often use those kind of things to just shut everything down because they're not going to work on it anyway. Okay, so let's not be those guys, right? Or girls or whatever. Okay, so this overlay again, if we use this kanji for the ruler, right? The ruler of my house, right? Then there's going to be things that I'm going to govern. And again, we've got this high level, mid level, low level. But if we flip that, right, and overlay it over our house, then we know I need to secure high level, high risk areas first. Then I can move on to middle level. And then whether or not I handle the low level stuff, that's entirely up to me. Okay. Or you, it's your house, right? Okay. So anyway, all right. So let's jump into these three conditions. Okay. I like my whiteboard, but some days, if I don't want to have to keep buying the damn things over and over again, maybe those little flip panel things would be easier, because I wouldn't have to waste the time on erasing. But then again, now I wouldn't be wasting the time explaining why I wouldn't be wasting the time erasing. Anyway, all right. So, okay. So we have these three focal points, right? Environmental considerations, again, having the home field advantage and setting up a ninja house. So we'll start with the environmental considerations. Okay. So there's three, right? Okay. And what I'm looking at here are three environmental considerations that you do not have for the most part, right? Unless you create them, which is what we're going to do during this Friday's virtual class, right? We're going to create them that you don't typically have in a dojo or in a fight ring. Okay. Unless you've got, the WWE portion of our show, right? So three environmental considerations, right? One is furniture. Okay, furniture. So what's the idea with furniture, right? Obstacles. Okay. In a living room, not mine, but in a living room, right? You may have a couch or a sofa, whatever you want to call it. Might be a love seat, might be a chair or two. There might be an ottoman or hassock. People have different names for these things, right? Footstool kind of thing. Sit in the chair, bring your feet up. If you don't have a recliner, might have a recliner, right? You might have a coffee table, end tables, those kind of things, right? So you have things that cut down on the usable open space in the room. But these obstacles also create a possibility or a potential for ending up in almost a ground fighting position, even if you're not technically on the ground. And here's something again. People like to argue a sport martial art over a self-defense system or whatever, right? Because if you go to the ground, you can fight this way and you can do. Okay, you're really going to have to look into your different techniques, because how many of those techniques, the restraints, the leg pins, the little, tricky maneuvers and all that, can you do if one ass cheek is hanging off a couch or a bed, or if you're on cushions where there's lots of give and you have no leverage to work off the ground, or you're on the cushions, they're on top of you this way, and you've got, the back of the piece of furniture this way. Again, a lot of people don't want to have to think about this stuff because it's too much, right? It's too much. But are we training for self-defense, or are we training to earn a belt or a trophy in a match that's held in a controlled environment? That's for you, okay? So anyway, furniture and obstacles and things that we have to think about, right? Second one, okay? Excuse me. We have doorways, entryways. Okay. So what are we looking at with doorways, right? What we're looking at are bottlenecks. Okay. For those of you who are not familiar with English, little slang words and things like that, right? A bottleneck, just like the neck of a bottle, right? Everything's trying to get out, but it gets jammed up right here. Okay. So what ends up happening is both of your bodies, one or both of your bodies, might be in this doorway, might be, hell, in a space between the refrigerator and a wall, might be, you might have been knocked back into something, or you might have knocked him back into something in a school, right? When I was growing up, okay, they were full-on lockers, not just in the gym area, right, the locker rooms, but actually lining the halls. Okay, so but you have these bottlenecks where you or them could get jammed into this thing, because now what it's going to do is either eliminate a limb because you're in sideways and this is in the void and all you have is what's out here, or you get kind of wedged in and now you have limited use, right? And how do you get out of those kind of things, right? But bottlenecks, it's not necessarily just doorways, right? This can also be corners. Okay, they're a form of bottleneck as well, because you end up getting channeled and jammed into this little pocket, in this little void space. Okay, the third one, okay, is actually flooring. Okay, in martial arts schools, and when people are practicing self-defense, they will go out of their way to make sure the flooring is conducive to practice, right? It's smooth, it's even, right? There's no splinters sticking out of the floor, right? If people are training in their backyard or they go to a park, right? What they tend to do is mill around. I know, we used to do it, right? Mill around and find the cushiest grass, find areas that don't have like roots sticking up out of the ground, that when you drop somebody or you get dropped, right? Your skull, your neck, your spine, whatever, right? An organ doesn't come down on one of these things, okay? Rocks jutting out, slight rises or little divots and things like that, right? But here's something for in the house, right? Footwear. I'll just call it footwear mismatch. Right? Footwear mismatch is again, when people are training, right? I've seen, in martial arts catalogs and magazines, you can buy special shoes, right? That have a special tread that allow you to do some of these little pivot maneuvers and whatnot, not get jammed up. Why do they make those? Because if you're wearing running shoes or you're wearing cross trainers or whatever that are designed to give you full-on traction, and you do that, you're going to sprain, strain, or otherwise dislocate your freaking ankle, right? So, but it's not just that. Right? I don't know your context or how you live or whatever, right? But a lot of people, they take off their shoes when they go in the house, right? Some put on slippers. They have a very different bottom to them, right? Some wear socks, right? Some are in bare feet. That's going to be different based on, and again, in the dojo, You got one thing. We could either have tatami mats or we have an outdoor carpeting here, whatever, right? But out there could be loose gravel, dirt, whatever, right? In the house, you could go from one room that's carpeted to another room that's hardwood floor or tile or linoleum or something like that, right? And your footwear is going to be different on those things, right? And if you haven't trained to be able to handle resistance and things like that, and what that's going to do, everything's different. Even with the ground fighting stuff we talked about earlier, right? Ground fighting, you might end up on the ground, okay? But what is it like in those velour PJs or whatever you like to wear or whatever, right? On linoleum or on a hardwood floor, right? And what kind of maneuverability do you have? What kind of, how does it get stuck? Whatever. What's that like on plush carpet? What's that like? Okay. These are all different considerations. Now, you can take this and run with it as far as you want, or you can do what most people do and find this mildly interesting, but this is really super simple stuff. And I'm going to remember how to do things under pressure, under the adrenal response, when I've been reduced to gross motor skills, including mental functions. And I'll be able to handle the survival situation. Don't worry about it. This stuff's all easy. I know this stuff. There's a difference between knowing it here, right? Here, left brain, and knowing it, right, intuitively. Right. We just did a test last night here at the academy, and one of the adult students who's well into the second phase of his training toward black belt, right? One of the questions that I often ask is, what's the most important thing you think you've learned since you began training? Okay. Well, once they hit this pivot point and they're in the upper levels, the question changes, right? What value or what changes have you noticed, or have you found that's very different or that was surprising, right, from what you used to think about, right? And most adults, it's awareness, right? In the beginning, it's awareness. For him, it was awareness also, but he said this prajna, well, in Sanskrit, it's called prajna, in Japanese, it's called hanya, right? This insight is developing where he's finding that in stressful situations, right, he's not defaulting to left brain through a Rolodex. What do I say? What did sensei say? What technique? Those kind of things, right? What he's noticing are lines of force and weak points and things like that, that he doesn't have to go looking for a technique in a memory bank, right? It's just, he's just starting to know what's that thing to do, okay? So again, you can take this, you can not take this, it doesn't matter, okay? To me, it doesn't, right? I'm covering this lesson for people who are going to do with it, right? What it's designed for, okay? But ultimately, you do you. The choice always is yours, right? But so are the consequences. All right, so let's move on to the next one, right? So first one was environmental considerations, right? And again, these were just three big ones, right? Regardless of where you are, because we're on Facebook, we've got this thing going on YouTube and all that, right? If you could think of something that I missed or something that would fall under these that you think deserves more attention or you'd like for me to speak on or whatever, throw it down in the comment section, right? If you've had to defend yourself in a workspace, convenience store, behind the counter, office space, home, whatever, right? What came up, right? If you had to do it all over again, what could you, or should you have trained for beforehand or done or taken advantage of or watched out for or whatever, right? What did you learn from that experience? Just post it in the comments, okay? That way other people can benefit from it as well, okay? All right, so moving on here. I want to make sure I'm going to keep my notes straight here. Okay, so next one, right? Let's talk about this idea of home field advantage. Okay, for those of you who are not uber sports fanatics like me, I'm not. However, I was way back in my early days, right? What home field advantage means is let's say I go to a certain high school, there's a team, right? And some of their games are at our home stadium, right? It's a thing attached to the high school grounds, right? Other ones, they go away to other teams. And what this does is kind of balance things out, right? Because the home field is the one where you do all your practice, okay? Just like in the dojo, right? People do all their practice in the dojo, or they do their practice in their backyard. They do their practice with their weapons, right? Whether it's their sidearm, their favorite knife, their favorite hanbo, whatever, right? And so picking up and having to use another one, you strip it from somebody, whatever, and you have to use it, you're not as familiar with the balance, operation, and all those kind of things, the weight and all that kind of stuff, right? Same thing with a home field, right? The footing, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's why we do street clothes days, 2 days out of every month, okay? People are supposed to wear what they wear to school, what they wear to work, what they might wear around the house, not lingerie, okay? But you get the idea, right? They're supposed to wear, like if they go hiking, right? It's one of their pastimes, right? Come in hiking boots and jeans and, whatever, right? Because the idea is you need to get out of your uniform. You need to get out of your gi. You need to get out of your normal training clothes, right? You need to have footwear on instead of socks, right? If it's summertime and, you're a flip-flop sandal person, but in the wintertime, you're a heavier boot or croc or whatever kind of person, see, they're gonna interact with even the same ground surface very, very differently, right? So what ends up happening is 99.2%, it's more than that, right, of people's training is in the same environment. They go to the same park, they go to the same backyard, they go to the same dojo, whatever, right? And so there's this confidence that builds because you're really good at the stuff that you're learning. But what we can forget is that we're good at the stuff we're learning in a given environment, in certain clothing, right? It's different, okay? So home field advantage, right? So here's what there's 3 points that I have for you, and then we'll talk about this global kind of thing, right? So here's the thing, right? Right. Remember those the furniture that I talked about in the environmental conditions, right? He should be the one tripping over those things, not you. Okay. If you walk through, if you get up to, I don't know, go pee or go get a drink or something like that in the middle of the night, and you trot out in your bedroom, maybe you got some stairs to handle or whatever, right? And you're still feeling around in the dark, right? Or you cut through a room or whatever, and you slam your shin into a coffee table that's been there for 3 years or 2 months or whatever. Not the best place to be, right? So a lot of this stuff can be tied in with stealth, but he should be tripping over those obstacles we talked about, not you, right? He should be having a problem navigating bottlenecks, whether it's from furniture, whatever, okay? Other things that are going on here, right? We have a dog, right? My grandson's about to move in for a little while. So I'm pretty sure we're going to have toys back on the floor again, right? But between the dog toys and the baby toys or whatever, what about those? Okay. So there's certain things that, again, if you're in ninjutsu, we as ninja, right, can very instinctively start to apply, like nukiash and some of this stealth walking that has nothing to do with being quiet, right? Or if I'm being taken to the ground, right? There's things I can do with my arm and whatnot that is designed to move shit out of my way, right? So I'm not clotting on top of this stuff or ramming into it, right? So I keep my feet very, very close to the soles of my feet, very, very close to the ground. And I use a gliding step as I go. So as I bump into these little things, my foot will kick them out of the way or shift them or whatever, as opposed to me taking these bigger steps and stepping on them. And if you've ever stepped on a Lego in the middle of the night, you know what samurai felt like when they stepped on those tetsubishi, those caltrips. Okay. And on top of that, if you've got a kid in the house that has Legos, if you've got a safe room, man, dude, just throw that shit on the floor, right? Okay. They'll crack, they'll pop, they'll make all kinds of noise and whatnot. And right, if the person's trying to be sneaky or he trips over one or slips and he comes down on that stuff, you'll know where he is. Okay. Anyway, but he should be tripping over things, not you. This begets knowing the lay of the land, right? What we covered earlier, you're the king, right? You're the queen. You're the ruler of your domain, right? It's your castle. It's your territory, right? Know the land, right? 2, right? Excuse me. You have access. You have access to the light switches. You can turn the lights on, turn the lights off, whatever, right? You should know exactly where they are and be able to get to them, right? It's actually possible to wire kill switches off your junction box to kill things altogether, right? Yeah, but what if he cuts the wire outside? Well, then he helped you out. Again, if he makes the place dark, unless the guy's wearing night vision, and if he's wearing night vision, he's probably in there for more than just burglary. Okay? That's a whole different world. Because it's one thing if somebody targets you out of a group of houses and they determine that yours has the easiest access, right? And again, the more fortified your land, the more fortified your property, right? They're going to pick something else. You can't make a determined attacker or burglar or whatever not want to be an attacker or burglar. What you can do is make them not want to come at you. Okay. And that's completely different. But if someone is specifically targeting you and they're willing to come into your domain, you got a fucking problem that's way bigger than this lesson. Way bigger than this lesson. Okay. All right. So access to switches, that kind of stuff. So you can control light sources. You can control what they have access to, those kind of things. Right. Okay. And let's see. You, because it's your field, right? What I put down here? Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can do things that create greater fortifications, right? And prior planning, right? For emergency plans, those kind of things. Okay. So again, here's the thing. He plans to get in and to carry out his plan, but there's a lot of vagueness in that because all he has to go on is the information that he has. Okay. You know, in department stores, they routinely move things around. You know, that shit that irritates you. You go in and this thing that you're looking to buy, you just want to get in and get out, right? And you go over to row or aisle 5 or whatever. You go over and it's supposed to be halfway down and you go and it's not there. There's something completely different there and you have to go hunting around. Okay. Well, there's logic to that. Okay. And it's in the retailer's advantage. Okay. What he does is he keeps things moving around because you're still going to find the thing that you want to buy. But the more you see things, the more you see the same things, right? The more Boca's region, right? A section on both sides of your brain filters out the common stuff. Okay. So what they know is while you're looking for where this thing was, you will become aware of more things that you didn't know that you couldn't live without. And there's a good chance that you're going to pick up 1 or 2 more things because it's going to jog your memory. Oh shit, I forgot. I needed that. I need D-size batteries for this thing, right? Or whatever it is, right? Okay. But you can do the same thing in your house. Okay. Not just for spring cleaning and, well, I got bored with the way the house or the living room was laid out. So we reposition. How about repositioning things so that as people come and go, or as the UPS guy, or not that your UPS guy is a thief or whatever, right? But so that the landscape is constantly changing. Okay. It's not the same for more than a month or 3. Okay. Something has changed, and not just the toys that are on the floor or the shoes that were kicked off or the clothes that were not picked up or whatever, although they do make great trip hazards. Anyway, right? So he plans to get in and carry out his plan, right? From this kind of a sense of vagueness, right? He may know the layout of your house, but he doesn't know exactly where everything is, right? You do, okay? You should have specific emergency reaction plans to carry out once somebody's inside, Okay. The stuff I covered first that made a whole bunch of people jump off because, well, like nobody was getting hit or punching and sticks and swords weren't flying and all that kind of stuff, right? That's the shit that keeps 99% of bad guys from coming into your house. Okay. Trimming back the hedges, lines of sight, all that kind of stuff, right? If you can keep them out, okay, like in companies, okay, here's a counterintuitive thing that I teach companies when it comes to workplace violence stuff, right? Lose the damn signs that prohibit weapons on site. Okay. I know that makes people comfortable. Okay. Nobody's carrying a weapon. Nobody's armed. Great. That makes sheep comfortable. You know what it does to bad guys? Makes them salivate because the chances of them running into resistance is now slim to none. But if no signs exist, they don't know. Okay? And not knowing, see, ignorance is not always bliss. Sometimes, okay, it's the same reason that when we first teach students, right, how to hold a sword, right, in this, let's say, Daijodo no Komai, right? We put it in a position where the cut starts. It's right here. Anything behind that, right, you got to make up more time. But as somebody gets more advanced, I'm going to have them hold the sword in positions, right, where it hides the length of the blade. If he can't read the length of the blade, he can't take proper position because he doesn't know what's safe and what's not. And that is a key point for safety, okay, in all realms, okay? If he doesn't know certain pieces of information, there's huge gaps in his plans, okay? All right, so we have the opportunity, right? It's our home. It's not like we're going and visiting hotels and whatnot. We have to hope that they have stuff in place, okay? It's our place, okay? So anyway, so let's jump on to this last one, and we're going to talk about making a ninja house. The hell is a ninja house? Okay. House, castle, whatever. Okay. Okay. What's a ninja house? Okay. Well, let me tell you a story. Every year when I take students to Japan, and we're itching to get back because COVID really threw that kind of stuff off, right? I take students to Togakure Mountain, right? Which is where it's the oldest ninja school in the Bujinkan, was founded, okay? If you're looking for Togakure, you're not going to find it on a map because in today's world, Togakure is called Togakushi, okay? So, but up on Togakushi, right, there's a set of 3 shrines. They have to do with these legends and the history and the lineage and all that stuff. So my students and I, there's actually 5, but we trek the 3 major ones, right, all the way to the top, okay? And at the entrance to the path leading to the uppermost shrine, right, across the street, there's a bus stop, and then there's the Togakushi Museum, okay? And so on this grounds, right, there is both a museum building and that kind of thing that's to the history of Togakushi, right? So it's everything from like World War II relics and just general stuff, right, through the ages, right? But there's also a building that houses 95% of the stuff that the Hatsumi Sensei had inherited from Takamatsu Sensei, his teacher, that he just didn't have the space to store. So it's there, right? Photographs you've probably seen in books, all those kind of things, right? And then there is actually a ninja house that was built, okay? It's this cool little thing that tourists can go through and all that kind of stuff, right? But there's 3 key pieces or 3 key parts to this thing that we can learn from, right? Because when most people go through it, it's neat, right? It's like a maze. I got to figure out where the secret doors are and how to get through and all that kind of stuff, right? But if we're going to set one up, if we're going to learn from history and integrate some of this stuff in place, right? Here's where some of that stuff lies, right? So 3 factors or 3 considerations, right? Again, if you've got more than these, right? If you think of something that I haven't covered in any of these sections, just put it in the comments, right? Post something like that, right? All right. So the first one, right, are escape routes. Right? There's also escape rooms, but you got to be careful with the escape rooms because sometimes it's not an escape thing, right? One of the rooms, right, is actually what seems like a labyrinth, right? But the panels, the wall panels, flip around. They're on central axles or whatever, right? So some are very firm and in place, but other ones you can bump into and end up in an adjacent hallway by passing through this thing. Really, really cool, right? And if you push on it in the wrong direction, it feels like a solid wall. It's a cool thing, right? So there are escape routes and escape rooms, okay? Some are in the floor, some are in walls. You get the idea, okay? There are traps and alarms. Okay. Now, back in the day, right, they might have been tripwires attached to a bell, whatever, right? In this ninja house, there is a dead end room. You turn and go into this room, and what you're looking at are bars that don't open. You have to double back. But if you look up, what you see is something like right out of an Indiana Jones kind of thing. There's a big, thick piece of board, big, thick piece of tree, right? Big and square that fills the whole thing. And these big wooden spikes, they're like inverted cones, right? It's like something out of a Scooby-Doo or an old murder mystery kind of thing that would drop out of a bed. But it's right there. And you get the idea, right? You end up in here. All somebody has to do is yank on a cord, detach that lock mechanism, and, right? It's a bad day, okay? So there's traps and alarms, and there are hidden weapons. Right. Let me add something to this. There are hidden weapons that are easily accessible by you. Okay. If the weapon you have in your house is in a lockbox, in a closet, and the ammunition's in a different room and it's locked up, and, you know, because we're going to take that kind of safety way too far, right? Instead of thinking about a happy medium between safety and accessibility, well, then we really don't have a weapon. Well, I do have a weapon. Well, you own a weapon, but you don't have something that you can press into use like that. Okay. So it's kind of like your kata and your techniques. If you have to think about step 1, step 2, step 3, then you don't own it and you can't do it when the pressure's on. Okay. All right. So let's look at these. Okay. In my home, we have escape routes and we have some rooms that are safe rooms, but those safe rooms themselves actually have an escape route. I bought an old Victorian home that is big and spread out and 3 floors. There's an old servant's entrance. No, we don't have servants, but really comes in handy, right? That goes straight from the 2nd floor to the 1st floor. Might somebody come in that way? Yeah. But if they're coming in from another direction, that's an easy way out. Okay. All the way up to the 3rd floor. And then the 3rd floor has emergency egress ladders, 1 in each room to go out the windows. Okay. Traps and alarms. Okay. I'm not going to talk about the traps, but we have a security service that has wired up my house. Okay. So I have security cameras at front door, back door. Actually, we have 2 back doors along both sides of the house. And where's the other one go? There's another one. Anyway, right. So my house is surveilled. Right. And motion. The cool thing about today's world is we can outline sectors. So it'll watch anything that's in that field of vision, but anything that moves into that cyber net, so to speak, right, will trigger the recording mechanism. So, right. And they all have battery backup. They all have, it's a cool setup. Right. But there's more alarms than that. Right. So, and if somebody decides they're going to, I don't know, who knows, use smoke, fire, whatever. Okay. I've got 3 different types of smoke detection and fire systems, gas, all that kind of stuff, right? So, but, right, good luck getting in, okay, before I can get to what I need to protect the castle, okay? And then hidden weapons, I won't talk about what they are, but there are knives, there are everything from knives to bow shuriken to firearms to whatever, okay? So if somebody comes in my house, they better really want me, right? Because I'm not going down without a fight, okay? But again, this is going way beyond taijutsu, okay? Because what this really comes down to, and I know I've covered this in other classes, but it begets reviewing one last time. Well, probably not one last time, because as a teacher, I'm sure other teachers feel this way too. I feel like I'm constantly repeating myself, right? When it comes to security, I want you to think of it like 3 concentric circles. Okay, 3 concentric circles, right? Each of these is important in a security plan. Again, I don't care if it's your workplace, right? All this stuff that I just covered, Ninja House, home field advantage, and all that kind of stuff. You know your workplace, right? You have the ability to set up, right, safe spaces and all kinds of things, right, that you can defend from or you can hide from, whatever, right? Just talking about it or going through a slide presentation once or twice a year so HR can check off a box. Well, shit, that's just stupidity on multiple levels, okay? And not just theirs, okay? And complaining that they won't do something while we're not doing anything, waiting for them to do something, right? That ultimately rests on us. And I'll show you on here, okay? So 3 different circles, right? The first one, okay? I'm going to put friends and family, but we're not selling the Verizon service, right? Friends and family, right? What this really is your neighborhood. Okay. I kind of miss the older days. Now I know I'm an older guy, but people tend to just want to like filter out everybody else, be antisocial, that kind of thing. I have a couple of family members who are that way as well. But if I'm at least on friendly terms with my neighbors, we don't have to be doing dinner parties or anything like that, right? But if I'm watching their property and they're watching my property, right? See, what they're doing is they have vantage points that are outside of my security services, video cameras and detection systems that are on windows and doors and all kinds of cool stuff, right? The cool thing about today's world, right? Where's my phone? I guess it's over there, right? Is my security system wires into my phone. So when a detector goes off, I get a little text and I can bring it up and I can watch. I can arm my house from a distance. I can arm it while we're just getting ready to go to bed. I can disarm it. It's a cool thing, right? So, but this is the neighborhood, right? This is the first line of defense. This is rolling police cars. This is whatever, right? This is the thing that deters people from, right, getting at me, okay? The next one, right, is the structure itself, okay? So if I were talking to a company, right, now what we're talking about is access badges, entry and egress points, how easy it for somebody to get in and get out without being seen, right? The video cameras and sensors and whatnot that I've set up, but it's the structure, right? How defensible or vulnerable does the place look to somebody who's looking for a target? Okay. So here, this deters 90, 95%, right? Because if the neighborhood looks like it's too hard to sneak into places, right, without getting attention, then somebody's going to go somewhere else, right? If I am in an area, or in my town, there's several colleges around us, several high schools. So during certain times of the year, there are always sporting events and shit like that going on, right? And what does that mean? Well, it means that entire neighborhoods, 60% or better, is off at a sporting event or off at some place, right? Or since the majority of people work during the day, right? Houses are empty. You get the idea, right? So I've got to make sure that the place looks less than desirable. Okay. And then the third one, is you. Okay. So when it comes to learning, and here's what happens, right? When people are thinking about learning self-defense or survival, 90% or better of their attention goes right there. Right there. And the rest get less and less. Most get none, whatever. But here's the way it works. Remember that kanji? Remember that? High, middle, and low threat. Okay. Actual threat to you. We're going to invert this just like we did for the house. Okay. You won't know most of the threats that are deterred by this group right here. No clue. Okay. And that's the way it should be. That's what my taxes go for. Okay. That's what my goodwill and you know, saying hi and bye and whatnot to my neighbors as we, you know, pass in the day and whatnot, right? That buys me a lot. Okay. 95% weeded out there. Okay. So that's low threat to me. Because if this filters out the danger, it never gets to me. Right. Mid danger is when they're actually looking for a target and my house is a possibility. Okay. So mid level. Okay. There's high level right there. Okay. If you have all this stuff in place, the closer the danger can get to you, the higher your risk level goes and the greater the chances of you not surviving, no matter what color this is, what number is behind it, or what the size of your ego. Doesn't matter. Okay. It still comes down to the same thing. We still have the same framework working. But again, if all we're doing is paying attention here, then what we are saying is, I am such a badass. I don't need this shit in place. Right? Because I don't sleep. I stay awake 24/7. Right? So when he stealthily sneaks into my house and there's no alarm systems to go off, no loud alarms, no video to deter him, no signs, no nothing, right? And like just before he wants to shoot me in the head while I'm sleeping in my bed, I will pop awake, whip an Ichimonji no Kamae or an Ichimonji no Kata and a Mushadori and whatever else on his ass and gloat for the rest of my life because I did that shit. Again, stupidity on multiple levels. Okay. Anyway, so that being said, right, this is what most people come to me for, right? So this Friday, during this Friday virtual training, there's the URL, right? We are going to be looking at doing some self-defense training in and around walls, corners, obstacles, those kind of things, right? So if you want some physical examples of how that might work out or some scenarios to start basing things off of, right? You can jump over here at the Friday virtual training page and click on the link, right? Click on the little button. It's $4.99 for a single class, or just go ahead and jump in the Ninpo Masterclass group. And then you get 2 of those a week and a whole bunch of other bonuses and stuff like that. And then you get a ton of this stuff. And even if you can't make it, right? If you're working or you're going to be at a game or whatever, right? You get the recording, right? So anyway, give it some thought. Give this some thought, whether or not you jump on that Friday class or not. Okay. But give this more than a passing thought and a little bit of interest. Okay. Your life and the lives of those you love quite possibly could depend on the amount of time, effort, and energy you put in to everything other than what gets you your next belt level. But again, choice is yours. Talk to you next time. Be safe, train hard.